What I'm going to focus on today is everything to do with mentoring, reverse mentoring, and sponsorship. And first of all, for those of you who don't know me, I've got a slide there. So scarily, next year, I'll have had 50 years in industry from leaving university, which in fact was Nottingham. I've worked for a number of global corporates, which I've mentioned there. I've spent a lot of time in the STEM industries and particularly in the energy sector. A lot of that time was spent in with companies like ExxonMobil, Suez, Nalco, and others. And I've been very fortunate in my career to have worked in over 60 countries, pretty well everywhere in the world, with the exception of South America. I've had lots of roles, lots of organizational changes, lots of sectors. And one of the things I say to my students and people that I mentor is don't over worry finding what the perfect job is, because the reality is you will have many changes in your career. And in fact, there are several certainties in life, and clearly change is going to be one of them, and restructure is another. I've been involved in many restructures, so I wouldn't over worry about finding the perfect job. What I've done is I've had some fantastic jobs in my career, which have all been great. And even the ones that weren't so good, I learned a lot from. I've been involved in lots of meetings. I suspect you couldn't give me a CV that I haven't seen before, but I'm always willing to be surprised by that. I've seen a lot of CVs, been involved in a lot of interviews. I've worked in some pretty extreme temperatures, plus minus 35 in Russia. That was quite interesting. Karaoke songs with Russian operators at minus 35. I've also been in the middle of the Kuwait desert at plus 55 with a sandstorm blowing, which again was another interesting experience. Been to lots of places that have been very unusual. I've learned lots of things in my career. And I think actually all that I did in industry, and I got to very senior levels where I was running my last big job in industry, I was running 50 countries. All that experience I've got of working with people in other cultures, other geographies, I think has been a real plus in terms of what I do today, which is a portfolio career. So I'm part-time professor at Nottingham. I also do a lot of work in the energy transition, mentoring MBA and alums from several business schools. Diversity and inclusion is very important to me, and you'll see some of the organisations on that slide, which I'm involved in specifically. And the other thing that I do is a lot of mentoring and sponsorship, which obviously I'm going to talk a bit more about. But that takes up a huge amount of my time. I'm very fortunate. I'm at a stage in my career where money is irrelevant. It's all about doing stuff that I love and enjoy. And the energy transition, mentoring and sponsorship, D&I, and education particularly are important to me. Why is education important to me? My parents were Italian immigrants to the UK just after the war. In fact, my father had been a prisoner of war here. They came with no education. They both left school at 11. Father was a shoemaker, mother was a dressmaker. They couldn't speak English, no jobs, no money. But they were always very supportive of us. I was the firstborn, and I was very fortunate to go to grammar school, and I was able to get to university. So education is important to me, and I believe very strongly that education can transform lives like it did mine. I'm very happy to link up with you on LinkedIn, so feel free to send me any LinkedIn messages if you'd like to do that. So that's what I'm going to talk about. Mentoring, reverse mentoring, sponsorship. I suspect I've got a lot of people in the audience who will be expert in these areas. So apologies to those who, if I'm going to talk, perhaps for the ones also that don't have so much experience, but feel free to, as I say, to ask questions as we're going along. I first came into mentoring, I would say, in my business career. So although I led very large teams, in fact, a couple of thousand people, billion-dollar businesses that over 50 countries. The thing, and leadership was very important to me, and I feel very strongly about servant leadership, very much the inclusive style of leadership. But actually, what I got a real buzz out of was mentoring people in my organization. And very often wasn't just mentoring those people. It was actually, because I got to very senior level, I was actually able to advocate for them as well. So mentoring is often seen as a knowledge share from a senior person to a junior. And I think one of the key things for me about mentoring is the empathetic listening. So what do I mean by that? There's something called active listening, where somebody will say something to you, and you will probably repeat back to make sure that you've understood what they've said. But I think empathetic listening takes that a step forward. For me, it's about listening for what's not being said as much as what is being said. The body language, eye contact, general demeanor of people can often give away a lot about how they're actually feeling. And I feel this is a very important part of mentoring, because you can sit down with an individual and feel that you're getting to understand them and the conversation, but actually their body language betrays that probably there are some issues behind that. So I would say, out of all of those key skills, for me, empathetic listening is the most important. I think the other things that I would also talk about mentoring are, it's not just for me about senior telling junior what to do, or this is how the world is, and I suggest you do this. It's actually a two-way relationship. And that, for me, is when you get the magic in a mentoring relationship. And a lot of people often say to me, Vince, well, who mentors you? I say, well, actually, I'm very fortunate, because today maybe I mentor a couple of thousand people, but I've got a couple of thousand people who mentor me. I learn something new from every single person that I talk to in a mentoring relationship. And in fact, when I say magic, when I say learning from each other, if you were a visitor from Mars and happened to drop into a proper mentoring relationship, you'd probably be hard pressed to know who was the mentor and who was the mentee, because of the fact it's such a two-way relationship. And the beauty of it is, of course, is it allows a lot of sharing and learning across generations. I mean, I work in Nottingham University in a department where we've actually got 5 generations. We actually span from Generation Z to I'm baby boomer. We've even got somebody in our organization who's actually the next generation up. So we have a lot of sharing and learning across generations. And the other thing that differentiates mentoring maybe from coaching is it tends to be a long-term relationship. So it's something that probably lasts for several sessions, months. I've got mentoring relationships which probably go back at least 15, 20 years with some people. And it's not that we talk every week. We talk, and then something may come up a few months later or whatever. So that's, for me, is mentoring. I don't know whether there's any questions there, Kevin. I'll go on to the next slide.
We're good for questions so far, Vince. Thank you.
I think you all know why mentoring is important. Because it actually can benefit both the mentor and mentee. I've got some people I mentor today. I'll give you an example. I'm working with quite a few women in tech at the moment, and some of them are in AI, the AI space. I'm no expert at all in AI, and I'm not really an expert in tech. My background is chemical engineering and energy. So those individuals, although I'm supporting them in their career journey, they're actually telling me an awful lot about tech and AI that I didn't have knowledge about before. And that has been extremely beneficial for me. So mentors can get a huge amount out of a relationship just as much as a mentee. And I've listed here some of the other things that I think you will get out of a mentoring relationship. We know about, obviously, professional growth, because mentors are there to support your growth in organizations. They're also there to encourage and boost your confidence. I'm a great believer in advocating for people on social media, for example, on LinkedIn. Some of you might know some of my posts. So as an example, one of my mentees recently published a couple of books. She works with young children, giving them classes in STEM, and these are anywhere between 3 and 11 years old. She actually wrote a couple of books and asked me to review them and to give some comments, which I was happy to do. And now she's just about to publish them, and I've actually done a big post on LinkedIn to advertise her to my network and hopefully to a much wider community. I'm very happy, and I think a mentor should be very happy and confident in encouraging and boosting the confidence of the people they work with. We're not just here to talk about your strengths, of course. We're here to talk about areas for improvement, which is very much what you would probably get with a line manager who cares about you. And I think often we can be very good at boosting people, but sometimes find it perhaps difficult to focus on where they should be improving. But I think that's a key area of mentoring. We can all improve, and I expect the mentee to tell me where I need to improve as well. Networking opportunities. So as a mentor, I am very happy to introduce my mentees to people who are not in their network that I think will be important people for them to connect with. And in fact, in the last week, I've met up probably with about 10 of my mentees, and I think with over half of them, I've actually put them in touch with other people in my network that I think are people that they should get to know. And I think this is a very important part of being a mentor, is we open a network. And not only that, I myself have had a network open to me. The tech industry is something that I only really started mentoring in probably last year. And through the people I've been mentoring, they've opened doors for me to the tech industry, which I never would have had before. So this is all about the two-way relationship. The other thing about mentoring is it may improve company retention. If you're being mentored in an organization, perhaps there's a view, and particularly if the mentor cares about you, that the company is looking after you and cares about you. And I think that's very important. And particularly today, where we know there's, particularly in the STEM industries, there's a major issue with women staying in companies. I might come on to that a little bit later. Anything yet, Kevin? No?
Yeah, all good, thank you, Vince.
All good. Well, there's loads of ways that you can find a mentor. I think first of all, I would say everybody on this call should have at least 2 mentors. One internal in the company that they work in, and one external. And I say at least 2. You can have as many as you want, because mentors can bring different things in different mentoring relationships. But I would suggest at least 2. Clearly, in some companies, you may get provided a mentor, or you may actually be allowed to choose one. When I started work and got involved in my first mentoring relationship with a senior manager, we never actually had a process in the company to find one. It was much more finding somebody that you could get on with, and then perhaps it developing into a mentoring relationship. So I'd say the first major one I had, and I've had several in industry, came about through this individual who was a middle manager, identifying a potential opportunity, which he approached me with, is actually to move away from being a sort of technical engineer more towards commercial and running a small organization, which is actually the direction I've been thinking of going in anyway. I took up the opportunity, and that individual is somebody that we began to develop a relationship. And what was quite interesting was we were totally different personalities. He was very much what I would call a red-blue, very analytical, very task-focused individual. I'm probably more yellow-green with some red. So much more on maybe the people side. But what we actually discovered in the conversations we did have was that probably we were a support to each other. He maybe brought the analytical, task-focused side, and I brought the people-focused side. And between us, I think we were a good team. So actually, he became my first mentor. And as I say, we never spoke about it, but we just met frequently. And eventually, actually, he moved up the organization. So he moved up to executive level, and I moved up with him. So he actually ended up being a sponsor for me. He advocated for me. And when he retired, I took his job. So that was an interesting relationship that came through the company. Networking and other relationships can bring mentors. So again, if I look at the people that I mentor, they've come through different routes. Some have come through organizations that provide scope for mentoring. Reed Women in Tech is clearly one. I work with organizations like the Energy Institute, Kajigo, Women in Tech, Female Leaders in STEM Subjects, the Institute of Chemical Engineers, etc., etc. So a whole range of organizations, and also through the business schools I work with. But some have come through different relationships, and they may have come through friends of those people that I've been put in touch with, or they may have even come, and I've got an example or two in the last couple of weeks where I met some people at an event. I was talking about mentoring, and we got into a conversation, and I've sort of found out that they hadn't got a mentor. So actually, I just reached out to them and said, do you have a mentor? And if not, I'd be very happy to be one. And so very often the mentor can find people to mentor. So it may come through that sort of relationship. It's not necessarily somebody coming to me, but it may be me going to those individuals. And the reason I might go out to them is that I might actually feel that there's a need. And in some ways, that relationship looks as though it could be a good relationship that would work. But as I said earlier, you don't necessarily have to have somebody who is like you. You may feel more comfortable with someone who is like you, but the reality is they don't. And in fact, sometimes it's the people who are different to you who may bring aspects to the mentoring relationship that you would never have thought about. So those are the sorts of things that I would say about finding a mentor. You may find one through organizations, you may find one through networking, they may find you. But I think what's important is to develop the relationship such that it becomes a long-term mentoring relationship and isn't just a sort of a one-off chat over Zoom or Teams for 15 minutes to address a few queries. For me, that's fine, and if that's what you want, that's great. But that is probably not something that will develop into a long-term relationship. Anything yet, Kevin?
Seems like you mentioned us, Vince, I'll just take this opportunity to talk a bit about our program, and actually how it's specifically designed to run alongside other mentoring initiatives and in internal programs. Because when we started doing this 6.5 years ago, so what we do is we provide a variety of opportunities to support employers and the women in those companies to develop their skills. Our target audience is women in tech and transformation, but the nature of the work that we do is not necessarily tech. It's helping people with wider career skills. And when we first started mentoring, we followed the typical format and template of a mentoring program, which is that it starts on a defined date, it runs for a defined amount of time, and there's probably some set objectives that you as the mentoring organizer have decided this program is going to help people in these areas. What we identified really is internal programs tend to do that very well. You probably align the running of the program to the annual reviews that your staff have, so there's a sensible time for that program to start. You probably run it for a year because you want it to run alongside that review period. And you as a business probably identified some areas that you think your people need or could benefit from having support in. So the program probably has some quite defined outcomes that you can then run specific training programs alongside as well. We wanted to make sure that we weren't competing with that, but we're also actually complementing that. So we're trying to service the other needs. So the way that our program works is that an individual can get access to a mentor any day of the year. So they're not waiting for us to start our program. They're not applying to be part of a program. They're not limited because of there's only a set number of mentors available within the company to be able to mentor them. So any individual can use our marketplace to find a mentor. Coming back to Vince's point about the duration of those relationships, if they just need 1 or 2 conversations to get them out of a bit of trouble, they can have that. If they are working towards a longer term goal that might take 6, 12 or more months, they can have that. And ultimately they can get support on a whole variety of topics. So it could be about leadership development skills. It could be about being better communicator. It could be about preparing for an internal job promotion. So it's very, very flexible. So I'm going to pop a link to our program in the chat in case anybody wants to find out more about our program specifically. But yeah, it's just one of the many options that are out there. Back to you, Vince.
That's a great option. A great option, and there's been a huge support for lots of women in tech. Thank you, Kevin. Right, so there's lots of stuff there. I thought what might be good here is if I actually talk about how I've developed some of those mentoring relationships and how they've progressed. So normally what I try and do in a mentoring relationship is my first meeting with someone is to get to know them and for them to get to know me. So we may or may not focus at all on career journeys and other things in much detail in that first meeting. I think it's important to get to know each other, and the way I like to work is I like to be very open about me and why I do this, and I think in being open with someone, they are very much open with me. And I think that's important. You know, I like to get beyond the sound bites and the sort of more generic feelings and thoughts behind what's actually the issues. Because anyone who wants to enter into a mentoring relationship has an issue, has something that they want to raise and they want to share with someone. And very often, actually, of course, they may even know the answers. It's just they're looking for somebody to bounce ideas off, which is fine. I think a mentor can be an idea bouncer offer. So I like to use that first session to get to know people very well and them to get to know me. And then we perhaps move more in terms of exploring the areas that they would like to explore in more detail. And my expectation would be that our future meetings, first of all, we try and organize those from our first session. How long would a mentoring conversation last? I probably wouldn't go much beyond an hour. I think an hour seems to work pretty well. I like to have those sessions somewhere, if it's in person, of course, somewhere comfortable like a coffee bar or somewhere where we can have a decent conversation. But I would then ask the mentee to set the agenda for the next sessions. So we usually work on that sort of basis, that they would develop, because they're the ones looking for the expertise or the advice. But obviously, very often, what may come from that are some new things that we hadn't even thought about. So getting to know each other and then moving forward on that path, we would set very clear goals that I would expect the mentee to work on. So, for example, I met somebody last week where I set them some specific goals about following up with some executive recruitment companies. So I mentor people literally from school to board and everything in between. So this was a pretty senior person who was looking for their next career move. They hadn't worked well before with executive recruitment. I've worked in that area, so I was able to set them some, give them some ideas of the sorts of organisations to get in touch with, and then they would follow up. So our next meeting, we'll talk about what they've been doing with those executive recruitment companies. The other thing that I've asked them to do is to develop their network, and talked about the way they might go about networking with people, both with people they know and people they don't know. So what I'm doing there is sort of helping the mentee to move forward and to develop some clear goals and deadlines and expectations for when we meet next. I think from the mentee's side, they're obviously there to follow up on these tasks and to actually come back and reflect on the areas that have gone well and the areas that need improvement. I think the other thing is I have an expectation as well that getting out of comfort zone is where we actually probably learn more than if we stay in the comfort zone. So I will be asking the mentee to move out of whatever comfort zone they may have been in and to actually look for opportunities beyond what they know today. And if you think of the old way LinkedIn works, first degree, second degree, third degree connections, my expectation is that through our mentoring relationship, the mentee will have moved to the third level and not just say stuck in the first level where they've just got their friends. So getting out of the comfort zone for me is very important. The other thing that's important in the relationship, and it's happened to me a few times, is it's become apparent in the relationship that we maybe have reached the end of the stage of my support, and they need somebody else. So a mentoring relationship is not necessarily for life. And in fact, there's no shame attached to suggesting to the mentee that perhaps we need to find somebody else to support them, to take them on to the next stage because of where they are in their career journey or the direction they want to go in or whatever. And I've done that a few times, and I say there's nothing bad or a shame about it. It's a reality in a mentoring relationship. It may not be for life, and we need to make sure that that we're aware of that, and we don't let mentoring relationships go flat because there's nothing more that we can offer each other. Okay, anything before I go into reverse mentoring, Kevin? No?
Far away.
Right. Okay. Must be saving all the questions for the end, or hopefully I'm keeping everybody awake anyway. I'm doing my best. Right. Reverse mentoring. In a sense, the mentor-mentee relationship, if it works in the way I've been speaking, the magic, it's a reverse mentoring relationship anyway, where the mentee mentors the mentor. So it turns it upside down. What's happened recently in some companies, and I can give you some examples. I worked with a big tech company, an energy company. We've been speaking about how they can improve their knowledge of what's been happening with new graduates coming in, because very often senior leadership in companies, they're out of touch with what's happening with individuals joining the company at graduate level, or certainly in their early 20s, because they were there 20 years ago and things have changed. So I've recommended some companies, they've introduced a reverse mentoring relationship whereby the new graduates coming in mentor the senior leaders. And of course, it's about the knowledge share there may be very different to the knowledge share from a mentor to a mentee in a traditional relationship. So the knowledge share there may be more technical, for example. So me learning about coding and other stuff that I didn't do at university, or using AutoCAD or whatever. So there may be a technical aspect to it. Or it may be, well, the world has changed. And in fact, these are the sorts of issues that we face coming into organizations. And we know in STEM, we have a problem with getting more women into STEM and staying in STEM. We have a problem with not enough people from underrepresented groups coming in. And if senior leadership were able to do a reverse mentoring with those individuals, and a lot of companies have introduced that, they're able to understand more what those issues are, and they may well help foster a more inclusive relationship culture in the company and relationships. So reverse mentoring, I think, is a very important area. The other thing, of course, it can do is build connections with people in the company. I worked with a defense company that had introduced reverse mentoring 2 or 3 years ago very successfully. I brought in some best practices from other industries, which they took on board. Theirs has been running very well, and the companies that I've talked to where they have reverse mentoring runs excellently. And I think the only thing I would say is that there needs to be some upfront training with both the mentor and the reverse mentor, because sometimes some of the senior leaders may need to drop the ego at the door and just accept the fact that some of these younger staff are prepared to be much more open with them than they may be in a normal business relationship. And equally, the mentee, maybe the reverse mentor, maybe needs a bit of guidance and training about the fact that actually, look, this relationship won't work unless you're honest with the senior leader. And again, lots of young people, graduates joining companies would have felt uncomfortable about doing that. Oh, I can't say that because it may impact my career. Well, in a reverse mentoring relationship, egos and all that sort of stuff is out the window and out the door. It has to be an open and honest relationship for it to work. And again, I've seen staff retention improve in organizations through reverse mentoring. As I say, I reverse mentor with pretty well everyone I mentor myself. I get an awful lot out of the relationship. I've learned huge amounts. I still believe very strongly that every relationship, every conversation you have, you learn something new. And I've been able to use that something new in mentoring that I've done after that conversation. Great believer in that, and it's all about learning and applying that learning to the next mentoring relationship that you have. Okay, I'm going to go on to sponsorship. Kevin,
before you go on, Vince, you've woken the crowd up. There's lots of questions. So the first question from Anaria is about the fact that mentor-mentee relationships should be two-way, as you've said. And I think you've answered some of this in this slide, actually, just after she posted the question. But the question is, what are some ways that mentees can contribute more to the relationship? And then I will add to that, I guess, if it's not reverse mentoring, specifically defined reverse mentor relationship, how does the mentee go about instigating that conversation about how they can help the mentor?
Yes. So I think a lot of this is built on from that first conversation of getting to know each other, because in getting to know each other beyond the CV necessarily, I find in that conversation that the mentee has opened a door about what they can bring me just as much as probably I've opened another door about what I can bring them. And I would encourage mentees in the relationship to say, well, actually, I really appreciate you mentoring me. There may be some areas that I can support you, perhaps in these areas. What do you think? And having an open conversation. Again, if you've got the right mentor, the mentor will be open to that. So I would encourage you to actually develop the relationship well at the beginning, where it's so open that you're able to perhaps bring forward areas that you think you can help somebody and support somebody. And you know something, it may not actually be to do with the mentoring relationship. I'll give you an example. I was mentoring somebody who we got talking about family and other things, and I found out that they had somebody going to study a subject which I was interested in, but not very well aware of. And what we got an agreement was that their son would actually get in touch with me, and they'd be very happy for me to do that, and actually provide me some information that about this particular subject they were involved in, which I could then use in other mentoring relationships that I had, where I was actually discussing subjects which were perhaps beyond my normal STEM areas. So they actually were covering areas around marketing and media, which is not an area that I'm particularly knowledgeable about. So there was a case of the fact that our relationship opened up to not just mentoring and reverse mentoring, but it was actually into other subject areas, which were areas of interest to me because I was working with somebody else who was in that area as well. And what I was able to do was that other person, I was able to put in touch with the son of this person, and they were able then to develop a relationship and understand more about that area, which certainly helped that other individual and brought them expertise that I didn't have. So I think that's possibly a way that it can develop, Kevin. I think it's a lot of it is being as open as you can at the beginning, and that through that, I mean, you've got to feel safe in those sorts of environments. I hope I bring psychological safety, whatever you want to call it, to the relationship by being vulnerable myself in that. And by being vulnerable, I find that people open up to me as well. And in opening up, we can get into those depths of conversations that people probably wouldn't normally have if it was just I'm your mentor, you're my mentee. We're going to meet for half an hour and then we'll meet again in a couple of months. Does that answer that question a bit?
Yeah, I think so. I think you already spoke about the ways that, mentees have contributed to relationships in terms of opening your eyes to issues you didn't realize were a factor, bringing in more knowledge around emerging digital skills and trends.
Yes.
And, we get a lot of our mentors really benefit from mentees that have much better experience and skills with social media. And they're doing things like starting their own businesses and stuff as mentors. And they're looking for ways to better promote their personal brand, and they don't understand the current platforms that exist. So yeah, I think there's loads of ways that mentees can help their mentors. And yeah, as you said, we should encourage in that initial conversation it to be a two-way thing where we're both asking, where are you at the moment? What are you trying to improve in? And are there any challenges you've got? And it might be that the mentee can help some of those areas. Other questions we've got, Vince. One is about how you manage so many concurrent mentoring relationships. And alongside that, do you have a view of what is the right number that anybody should be looking to take on in a month?
One thing I've learned, I've got lots of weaknesses, Kevin. I think one of my strengths, and I've probably learned this from industry, is I'm very good at managing my time. And actually, the more I have, the better I am. I don't know what it is. It's a strange thing, I know. So actually, I am able to manage multiple relationships. I say I'm guessing it's probably about a couple of thousand. Now, obviously, if I had a couple of thousand that I had to do every week or two, I'd be going under. But actually, it's not like that. Those relationships, we can meet monthly, 3 monthly, 6 monthly, or if we're just kicking off and there's some urgent issues, can be every couple of weeks. Obviously, a mixture of online, in person. Can't meet them all in person, so we do a lot online as well. So actually, I find I'm pretty good at managing my time. The more, the merrier, and I can certainly keep all those balls being juggled. And as I say, I'm probably at a stage in my career. I don't have one single company full-time job anymore because I don't need it. I have a portfolio which allows me to do all the mentoring and sponsorship that I need to do. So that's probably how I do that. What was the other question again?
Do you have any advice on
how many?
You were in a full-time job. Yeah. What is sustainable? What is achievable?
Well, that's a very good question, because every person on this call will have a different level of preference and sustainability. and it depends, of course, on the commitment you've got to give in the mentoring relationship. So if you're in a full-time job, I would have thought probably you're not going to be able to do much more than half a dozen mentoring relationships. That's assuming that you can there every so often. I think it's only when you move to a portfolio career or part-time careers that you can actually take on a lot more than that. But all I would say is, it's a lot of this is try and see. In other words, you get a mentoring relationship, you see how much of your time that's taking up, and then, based on that and based on your day job, I think you then start to build on that. If you can do that, frankly, if you only end up with one, that's fine. I would say everyone is going to be different on that, and I'm not expecting people on here to have to be mentoring as many as I do. I think there are probably good reasons why I do what I do, and actually having a portfolio helps me to do that.
Yeah, a couple of points then linking back to our program. So the way our program's designed, like I said, it's a marketplace where mentors publish their availability. Mentors can self-impose a limit on themselves. So when they hit that limit, their profile is then hidden, and they can hide their profile at any point. So come back to your point, Vince, get a mentor relationship, see how it goes. If you feel you have time for a second one, open your profile again. If you don't think you've got time to give that same level of input again within the working week that you've got, don't do that. The other suggestion maybe as well is if you get a lot of mentees, there might be opportunities to do some group mentoring. So rather than it always being a one-to-one conversation, you can actually start to bring those people together and all help each other out.
That's actually very, very true, Kevin. And in fact, I'm working with one example I'm working with the University of Bristol's engineering department, where I will have 6 mentees. And actually, it'll be a group mentoring session. It's a group mentoring session where we're all learning from each other. And we'll probably meet in person 2 or 3 times, maybe online as well. So the group sessions can work well. I do quite a few group sessions with the business schools, and they work well as well. So absolutely, you can take on groups. I wouldn't go too big a group because obviously it gets a bit unwieldy, but I'd probably no more than about 5 or 6 maximum.
Yeah. Next question then, Vince, because I'm conscious of time. Coming back to your point about the insights profiles and your colour matches to the mentor you had.
Yes.
Is there any research and known psychology around what colours match better with others, and whether that's a factor you should build into your mentoring programme?
Very, very good. I am not aware. There probably is, actually, for the person who asked the question. There probably is, but frankly, it's not something I over worry about. Actually, I use Insights colours a lot. I actually work a lot with some of my mentees to understand their colours, and to be honest, for me, it's not a big deal if we're different, the same or different. I think as long as you're open with each other. I mean, there may be some people you perhaps initially gel with more just because maybe they have, I'm an optimist, positive. So probably anyone who's positive and optimist, I get on with pretty well straight away. But I've had loads of people who are definitely not that, and are pessimistic or a bit down about various things, and I work well with them. So no, I don't. I haven't found that. I probably, if I look across the couple of thousand I've got, I think they cover every single colour and every single combination probably.
Excellent, thank you, Vince. The next question we've got is, when you're working with female mentees in this space, how are you encouraging them to pursue STEM careers, or to take the next step forward in their STEM career, or even to stay in a STEM career? Because there's lots of challenges around retention at the moment, isn't there, in that space?
Oh, there is, and that might actually lead on to my next slide. So out of that couple of thousand, I reckon half of them are women, and quite a number of those are in STEM careers, and some of them have got some major issues. Let me actually, what that might do is encourage me to do the next slide, because I think I'm going to talk about that the answer to that on the next slide, which is sponsorship. And I'll give you an example. So I was mentoring a woman in engineering, and she said, "Oh, I've got an issue." I said, "What's the issue?" She says, "The issue is I'm doing a great job at work. I get lots of great performance reviews. So I know I'm doing a good job. But when I talk to my manager about opportunities, he just says, be patient." So I've been patient now for a year or two, and I'm getting frustrated. Why are you getting frustrated? Because I see men around me who my perception is not working as hard as me, and they're getting all the opportunities. So I said, well, I suspect you probably know what the answer is to that. And we got into the fact that the reality was she was spending all of her time doing a great job, nothing wrong with that. And the men who were getting the opportunities were probably doing a good enough job, but were spending the rest of the time networking with senior managers and getting sponsors, which is this next slide. And I think the issues that very often women face in STEM is, and particularly in the middle years, let's say between 5 and 20 years, and there have been various reports on this, the Lovelace report, women in tech, up to 60,000 women leave tech every year, an enormous cost. And we got the same problem in engineering, women leaving in those middle years, energy and other areas of tech and STEM. And the problem is a lack of opportunities, a lack of sponsorship, which is absolutely key. And we talk a lot about getting sponsors in your organization and spending the time to develop those relationships, because although mentoring is very important, from the perspective of working out maybe career routes, training needs, etc., it's sponsors that will accelerate your career. And I'll give you two examples of that, two of the greatest sponsors I had in my business career. The first one was that mentor that I spoke about earlier, who, as he rose up in the company, started advocating for me at senior and executive level. We developed the relationship such that I would meet him and he would even say, "Vince, there's an opportunity in our Singapore office for this role. If you're interested, I'll put your name forward. If you're not, I won't mention you." I mean, that was the relationship we had. And that's what a sponsor will do. They will advocate for you when you're not in the room, and they will support you and help develop you. So for everyone on this call, I believe if you're going to develop your career in organizations, you're going to need to develop sponsors. And that's the way you get a sponsor, can come through that networking route. It may have been a mentor who becomes a sponsor. It may have been through networking. Again, somebody I was mentoring worked at a relatively senior level in the company, and she said, "Oh, the CEO, I'd love to get with the CEO to perhaps look at whether he might be a sponsor for me. But the trouble is he gets in early in the morning." I said, "What do you mean he gets in early in the morning?" "Well, he's usually in about 6 o'clock, which is well before I arrive." I said, "Well, you know what you need to do, don't you? You need to get in at 6 in the morning and just happen to bump into him in the car park or in the lift." And we all know about the 30-second elevator lift discussion that you get to develop a sponsor. So find a way of meeting the sponsor. Find a way of bumping into them. Historically, it was more difficult for women because very often a lot of this would happen on the golf course and various other places where men would find it easy to congregate. Not so easy for women. So I think you're very reliant as well on the senior leadership being open to looking for sponsors as well. So I put a few things there. We're probably running a bit out of time, so I probably may have to rush a bit. But the key thing for me as well is never let a sponsor down. Bear in mind, they're going out on a limb for you. if you don't reciprocate, then you'll be dropped. Another way I found a sponsor, just very quickly, you can be strategic. So I knew that the CFO of the company was coming to the UK. I got him to meet my best people in the North Sea. He also got to meet my best clients. I also made sure that I engineered having dinner with him alone. And in that conversation, we actually opened up about family. I found out that he had a son. He was trying to get into a school in the UK. He didn't know how to do it. And I wrote the letter to get his son into the school in the UK. He became a sponsor after that. So again, it doesn't have to be a business related way to develop a relationship. It can sometimes come out of just a discussion. Anything more on that before I think I'm on to the final slide, actually?
I'll let you do your slide, Vince, and then...
Shall I? All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just end with a few things. Some of you may be aware of National Mentoring Day. We had that recently. Chelsea Baker up there is the founder of National Mentoring Day. And I've got a few quotes here about the impact on someone's life. There's a few quotes here, Spielberg, Rosalind Carter. My favorite one is Maya Angelou. I strongly believe if you want to be a mentor and a great mentor, you got to care about the person. So again, I would encourage people who are looking to become a mentor or to have a mentoring relationship. It's about caring for the other individual, and caring for the individual means that the relationship goes beyond just a hi, this is me, this is my CV, etc., and talking about where my career is going. I think caring is about developing a relationship where you do actually care for the individual and care for how their career develops. I think once you know and care about the person, you'll care about helping and supporting them. And I feel that's very important in the relationship. That's my presentation. I think we're just about finished on time.